The last wolf in Yellowstone died in 1926. A gunshot. The end of a story that had been writing itself for thousands of years. His name was recorded nowhere. His pack scattered or dead. The men who killed him went home to warm dinners and told their wives they'd had a good day's work. They were not wrong by the standards of their time. They had been paid to remove a problem. The problem was hunger with yellow eyes. The extermination had been systematic. In 1915, Congress allocated funds specifically for predator control, and the Biological Survey, predecessor to today's Fish and Wildlife Service, hired hunters to poison, trap, and shoot every wolf they could find. The government paid $5 for each dead wolf, $15 for a breeding female, a decent wage when most men earned $1 a day. They used strychnine-laced bait, steel traps with teeth like bear jaws, and organized hunts that drove entire packs toward waiting guns. One Montana hunter named Frank Glazer claimed to have killed over 1,000 wolves in his career, using a combination of poison and what he called good old-fashioned persistence. He kept a tally in a notebook, like a shopkeeper recording inventory. The poisoned carcasses killed more than wolves. Ravens, eagles, bears, foxes, anything that fed on carrion died in convulsions beside the bait. Entire sections of the ecosystem were sterilized, leaving landscapes that looked normal but functioned like broken clocks. For 70 years, the most famous wilderness in America had no wolves. Visitors came to see bears, elk, geysers, mountains that scraped the sky. They did not miss what they had never seen. A landscape can look complete even when its most essential piece is buried somewhere in the forest floor, ribs poking through pine needles. Before the killing, the Blackfeet had called wolves the ones who walk with the spirits. They believed wolves were teachers, showing humans how to hunt cooperatively, how to care for the weak, how to mourn their dead. Lakota warriors painted wolf tracks on their horses before battle, seeking the animal's intelligence and endurance. When the wolves disappeared, these tribes lost more than a predator. They lost a relative. The European settlers saw only competition. Their ancestors had spent centuries driving wolves from their homelands, and they brought that ancient fear across the ocean like a family heirloom. In their minds, wolves represented everything they had come to America to escape. The wild, the uncontrolled, the reminder that humans were not always at the top of the food chain. But ecosystems keep their own books, and the ledger was becoming unbalanced. Without wolves, the elk grew fat and fearless. They spent their days in the valleys, stripping bark from aspen trees, eating willow shoots down to nothing. The trees began to disappear, then the birds that nested in those trees, then the beavers that needed the trees for their dams, then the fish that needed the beaver ponds, then the bears that needed the fish. Scientists have a term for this: trophic cascade. When you remove the thing at the top, everything below it reorganizes itself around the absence. It's like removing the foundation of a house and watching each floor collapse in sequence, but very slowly, over decades, so that no one notices until the roof is resting on the ground. The men who killed the last wolf could not have imagined this. They saw a simple equation. Fewer wolves equals more elk equals more food for humans. They were thinking in straight lines. Nature thinks in spirals. By the 1960s, ecologists were beginning to understand what they had lost. The word ecosystem was new then, coined by a British botanist who realized that nothing in nature exists alone. Everything is connected to everything else in ways that make accountants weep and give poets fever dreams. But understanding and fixing are different kinds of work. The first attempts to bring wolves back failed before they started. Politicians called it a waste of money. Ranchers called it suicide. Hunters called it theft. The wolves themselves seemed to have vanished not just from the landscape, but from the realm of possibility. Then something shifted. Perhaps it was the environmental movement, or the growing awareness that humans had become architects of extinction. Perhaps it was simply that enough time had passed for people to forget why they had been afraid. In 1973, the Endangered Species Act became law. For the first time in American history, the government promised to protect animals, not because they were useful, but because they existed. The gray wolf was among the first species listed. A legal resurrection, though the body was still missing. The reintroduction program began with bureaucrats and biologists sitting in conference rooms, drawing maps of an animal they had never seen in the wild. They studied wolves in Alaska, in Canada, in Minnesota, the last holdouts, the survivors of a much larger catastrophe. They learned that wolves are not just apex predators, but sculptors of the landscape through the simple act of being present. A wolf pack doesn't just hunt. It changes where prey animals graze, how they move, and when they feed. Elk and deer become more cautious, more mobile. They avoid places where they might be trapped. The valleys where they once lounged become corridors they cross quickly, looking over their shoulders. This is called the landscape of fear. It sounds like poetry, but it's precise science. Fear, it turns out, is as important as hunger in shaping the world of nature. In January of 1995, the first wolves returned to Yellowstone in metal cages, loaded onto sleds, pulled by snowmobiles into the Lamar Valley. 14 Canadian wolves, caught in Alberta, drugged, transported across an international border to become American wolves, an adoption program written in tranquilizer darts and radio collars. The biologists released them into acclimation pens, large enclosures where the wolves could adjust to their new home while staying safe from humans who might shoot them before the experiment had a chance to work. The wolves paced the fence lines, testing the boundaries of their temporary prison, unaware they were the most watched predators in the world. Some of the wolves died in those early days, hit by cars, shot by ranchers, killed by other wolves establishing territory. The biologists had expected this. They had backup plans for their backup plans. More wolves arrived from Canada. The program continued. But then something remarkable happened. The surviving wolves began to thrive. The first pack formed in the Lamar Valley, the Rose Creek Pack, named after the area where they denned. The alpha female was wolf number 9, a strong animal who seemed to understand that she was not just living her own life, but pioneering a future for her species. She raised pups, taught them to hunt, and showed them the boundaries of their new territory. The elk noticed first. They stopped lingering in the valleys, stopped treating the landscape like an all-you-can-eat buffet. They moved to higher ground, grazed more quickly, stayed alert. For the first time in 70 years, young aspen trees survived their first winter. Willow shoots grew taller than elk could reach. The songbirds returned. Ravens followed the wolf packs, cleaning up after kills. Their intelligence finally matched with opportunity. Coyotes, once the top predator, were killed or displaced by wolves, allowing small mammal populations to recover. The rivers began to change course. This sounds impossible, but it happened. With elk no longer overgrazing the riverbanks, vegetation returned. The roots of trees and shrubs stabilized the soil. The meandering, eroding streams carved themselves new channels, deeper and more stable. The rivers remembered their original shape. 25 years later, Yellowstone has over 100 wolves in 10 or more packs. They have become tourist attractions, bringing millions of dollars to the local economy. People come from around the world to see them through spotting scopes, to hear them howl at dawn. Like the bison, wolves survive by becoming useful to us again. Tourism saved what bullets once erased. The same nation that paid bounties for dead wolves now pays millions to keep them alive and visible. The irony would be funny if it weren't built on so many bones. Every day, biologists track these wolves from computers in government offices. They can call up real-time satellite maps, showing the location of every collared wolf in the park. Pack 8F is near Soda Butte Creek. The Lamar Canyon Pack is moving toward the Specimen Ridge. Wolf 21M, the legendary breeding male, is denning with his mate in the same drainage where his grandfather was born. The technology is precise enough to know when a wolf is hunting, when it's resting, when it's separated from its pack. The wolves live their lives under a surveillance system that would make totalitarian governments envious. Every movement logged, every behavior recorded, every interaction analyzed. They are wild animals living in a digital panopticon. But the story is more complicated than a simple tale of success. Outside the park boundaries, wolves are still killed regularly. Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho have hunting seasons for wolves. The same states that fought hardest against reintroduction now manage wolves as game animals. The species that was once protected is now licensed for sport. The legal framework shifts constantly. Federal courts rule that wolves must be protected under the Endangered Species Act. State legislatures pass laws declaring wolves a nuisance species. Federal agencies appeal. Environmental groups file injunctions. The wolves exist in a permanent state of legal limbo, their survival dependent on the whims of judges who may never have seen a wolf outside a zoo. In 2020, Montana passed a law allowing hunters to use snares, night vision equipment, and bait to kill wolves. The same year, Wyoming classified wolves as predators outside of designated wilderness areas, meaning they could be killed year-round with no limit. Idaho authorized the killing of 90% of the state's wolves and offered bounties of up to $1,000 per animal. These are not ancient laws written by pioneers who didn't know better. They are modern legislation passed by democratically elected officials, supported by voters who understand exactly what they are authorizing. The politics of wolves never went away, they just evolved. Ranchers still lose livestock to wolves, though far less than they lose to disease, harsh weather, or simple accidents. The government compensates them for confirmed wolf kills, but compensation doesn't heal the anger of finding your cattle torn apart in a pasture where your grandfather grazed cattle safely for 50 years. In some rural communities, shooting a wolf is still considered a public service. The hatred runs deeper than economics or fear. It's cultural, almost genetic. The wolf represents something these communities have been fighting for generations. The wild intruding on the tame, the government telling them how to live, the suggestion that human needs are not the only needs that matter. Anti-wolf activists post photos of killed livestock on social media. Pro-wolf activists post photos of wolf families playing in mountain meadows. They are arguing about the same animal, but they might as well be looking at different species. The wolves themselves are indifferent to this debate. They hunt elk, raise pups, establish territories, die, and are replaced by other wolves. They are now part of the landscape again, embedded in the ecosystem as deeply as the rivers and the mountains. But they are not the same wolves that were killed in 1926. These are Canadian wolves, genetically distinct from the original Yellowstone wolves. The local subspecies, the northern Rocky Mountain wolf, is extinct. What we have now is a close relative, an ecological replacement, a stand-in for a lost original. It's a successful substitution. The ecosystem doesn't care about genetic purity. It needs a large predator that hunts in packs, and these wolves fit the job description perfectly. But something has been lost that can never be recovered. The wolves that evolved with this specific landscape, that knew its seasonal rhythms and prey patterns through thousands of years of adaptation, are gone forever. In other parts of North America, wolves have returned on their own. The Great Lakes region never completely lost its wolves, though they came close. In the 1960s, fewer than 350 wolves remained in Minnesota. Today, there are over 2,600 wolves in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan combined. These wolves didn't wait for human permission. They expanded their range naturally, following deer populations, adapting to human-modified landscapes. They learned to avoid roads, to hunt at night, and to live in smaller packs that attract less attention. The Mexican wolf, a smaller subspecies, has been slower to recover. Only about 200 exist in the wild, all descended from 7 animals captured in the 1970s. They carry the genetic bottleneck of near extinction in their DNA. Every Mexican wolf alive today is related to those 7 survivors, a family tree that looks more like a family twig. These wolves live under even more intensive management than their northern cousins. Biologists know their family histories going back generations, monitor their breeding patterns, relocate individuals to prevent inbreeding, and supplement their gene pool with captive-bred animals. It is conservation as intensive care, keeping a species alive through constant medical intervention. The irony is profound. The most endangered wolves in North America are also the most closely watched, the most carefully managed, the most dependent on human oversight. They are wild animals that exist only because humans have decided they should exist, in places humans have designated as appropriate, in numbers humans have determined to be sustainable. Eastern wolves are even more complicated. Scientists argue about whether they are a separate species, a subspecies of gray wolf, or hybrids between wolves and coyotes. DNA analysis has made the question more complex, not simpler. The eastern wolf genome is a mosaic of gray wolf, coyote, and domestic dog genes. The red wolf of the southeastern United States is the most endangered wolf in the world. Fewer than 20 remain in the wild. all in coastal North Carolina. They exist in a constant state of genetic emergency, managed like a collection of precious artifacts. Every red wolf birth is recorded, every death mourned by biologists who know each animal individually. But even success stories carry their own weight. The wolves of Yellowstone are now the most studied wolves in the world. They wear radio collars that transmit their location every few hours. Their family trees are tracked across generations. Their kills are documented, their social dynamics analyzed, their individual personalities cataloged by researchers who know them better than most people know their neighbors. This is the price of redemption, perpetual observation. These wolves exist in a state of permanent scientific custody. Their wildness is real, but it is also an experiment, a demonstration project, a living proof of concept. The wolves hunt and howl and raise their young, unaware that their every movement is being translated into data points, that their wildness is being quantified and archived. They live authentic wolf lives under the constant gaze of satellites and radio towers, free animals in an electronic cage so vast they cannot see its walls. In winter, when the tourists are gone, the wolves of Yellowstone move through the snow like ghosts of themselves. They hunt elk in the same valleys where their ancestors were hunted to extinction. They den in the same types of places, follow the same seasonal patterns, and respond to the same environmental cues. The landscape remembers them, and they remember the landscape. But they also remember humans. These wolves are not afraid of people the way truly wild wolves are. They allow themselves to be watched, photographed, and studied. They have learned that humans with spotting scopes and cameras are different from humans with guns, though the difference is not always clear to a wolf. Some biologists worry that this habituation to humans will spread to other wolf populations, making them more vulnerable to hunting and poaching. Others argue that wolves that tolerate human presence are more likely to survive in a world where human presence is everywhere. The future of wolves in North America is being written now, in courtrooms and state legislatures, in the decisions of individual ranchers and hunters, in the budgets of wildlife agencies, in the social media posts of people who have never seen a wolf but have strong opinions about them. A constantly changing world is reshaping the habitat faster than wolves can adapt. Prey animals are shifting their ranges northward and upward. Forests are burning more frequently and more intensely. The ecosystem that wolves have spent 25 years learning to inhabit is becoming something else. The wolves that survive will be the ones that can adapt to a landscape in constant flux. They will be more flexible, more opportunistic, more tolerant of human proximity than the wolves of the past. They will be wilder in some ways and more domesticated in others. They will be the wolves we deserve, which is to say, the wolves we have made possible. The last wolf in Yellowstone died in 1926 with no name and no mourners. The wolves there now have names, GPS coordinates, thousands of human observers, and a future that extends as far as human patience and politics will allow. Whether that future is long enough for wolves to become truly wild again is a question that will be answered by generations not yet born, in a world we are still in the process of destroying and remaking. In the meantime, the wolves hunt, socialize, and howl at the moon, just as they have always done, as if they had never been gone. If this video helped you understand the destiny of wolves, consider liking it, subscribing, and hitting that bell for updates. Also, if you think wolves are impressive, wait until you hear how coyotes have become North America's most resilient predators. Up next.